KOCT, its board of directors, staff, and the City of Oceanside do not support nor promote any candidates. We provide the following program as a public service for voters. All candidates have been invited to participate in this program, but not all were able to or chose to do so.
Welcome to KOCT's Roundtable. I'm Alison St. John, and I'm happy that you've joined us to find out more about the candidates who are running for the Oceanside City Council in this fall's election. If you live in Districts 1 or 2, you'll be voting in the next month for someone to represent you on City Council. Now, District 1 is the northwest quadrant of the city. It includes the pier and the harbour, and it stretches inland to the airport. District 2 is the northeast quadrant that borders with Camp Pendleton and includes Morrow Hills. Now, as you know, Oceanside is going through great change at the moment with a lot of new construction in many parts of town. It faces challenges, the growing homeless population, house prices rising, the shrinking beaches, new high-density developments. So it's very important to get your voice heard in this election. So now I'd like to introduce our candidates, who will each have about a minute to introduce themselves to us, and we'll do this in alphabetical order. The candidates for District 1 include Corey Jensen, and Eric Joyce is on my left immediately, and Darren Zelnick. And just for your information, Corey Jensen was actually appointed, so she has served a couple of years already. She was appointed by the City Council back in 2021 to replace Esther Sanchez when she was elected mayor. So this is the first election that Corey is running for a full year term, and here are the two challengers, Eric and Darren. Okay, so we'll start with you, Corey. Go ahead and give us a little bit of an idea about why you want a 4-year term and what you see your main focus would be.
Thank you, Allison. I believe it's important to finish the work that I've started on the council. We've brought in a navigation center, which is our homeless shelter, that's going to be opening the first of the year. And that project was very important to me. I was the deciding vote that chose the San Diego Rescue Mission over the other option. And it saves the city $1 million a year by going with a entity that is funded by nonprofits. So it's very important to me to see that be completed and open. And also the sand retention and replenishment. You know, we've brought on a coastal zone administrator to take over our sand issues and work with the Coastal Commission. So I'd like to see that project get started and come to fruition.
Okay, thank you. So alphabetically, Eric, you're next. And why is it that you would be the right person to deal with the issues that I want you to outline now?
So my name is Eric Joyce. I am a special education teacher by trade. I'm also a school board member. I've served on the school board for almost 4 years now. It's been the honor of my life to serve my city as a school board member. We've been through some really difficult times in the last couple of years, not just in the schools, but as a city. We've had neighborhoods that have faced incredible challenges under COVID. We've had frontline workers who were forced to work through the whole time. And we have a city that is on the brink of making major changes. And I think it's really important that we have somebody at the helm that is present in the community, that the community has trust for, and that's willing to have the hard conversations to make progress on all of these sticky issues that have been really difficult to get through before.
Great. So Darren, what are the issues you feel you would like to focus on the most, and what makes you the right person to be on the City Council?
Thank you, Allison. For those who don't know me, I'm Darren Zelnick, married, have a couple kids, been here 11 years. What makes me uniquely qualified to deal with the issues of homelessness and public safety and what I call common sense development, as we have a lot of new development like Ocean Camp near my house, is a unique background of being a retired military officer, being in the private sector in large healthcare companies, also being a senior executive at the Department of Veterans Affairs. So I know how to work the levers of city, state, and federal government And so the reason I'm running is that I saw that we have these challenges with homelessness. I've been going door to door, and the people in this district feel like they don't have a voice, like they're almost second-class citizens to tourism and developers. And we really need to get people together and get the right input so that we have the residents first, and that we actually have the development and the vision and the knowledge to go forward. And so that's what I bring to the table, a unique skill set of experience and knowledge and a track record of getting it done.
Well, let me pick up from that then, because I think it's true that, Oceanside used to be a city that was known as an affordable city in San Diego County, where, most people could afford, they had access to housing. But that has become, like everywhere else in the county, a problem, the high house prices. And one of the ways that you can make them come down is to build more housing. So let's talk about development, which Darren just mentioned. I'm going to just go first to whoever I pick, so be prepared. So Eric, where in the city do we need to build more housing?
Yeah, so housing we're in a crisis for housing. So I'm a renter. I experienced this crisis like most of our citizens do. Seeing the rates, the rentals go up and up and up with no end. It's rising with inflation, and it's squeezing our hardworking Oceansiders. We have, in development right now, a smart and sustainable corridor plan, which is a great plan because it not only finds places where we can build housing that's attainable for people that work here, but it's also a really positive plan for the environment. It strikes on both sides. So making our city extremely walkable and bikeable and connecting those corridors together in a safe way is the way that we can build housing. But we can't stop at housing. We also have to bring in good paying jobs so that people aren't living here and then having to drive to Escondido or to San Diego or to LA every day, wasting many, many hours of their lives away from their families.
Before we start talking about jobs, though, I really would like you to be more specific about where you think we need to be building this housing in Oceanside, because we have some very major developments just about to start, and there's a lot of controversy over them. Do you have any concerns about where we're building now, where we're planning to build?
So I do have concerns about some of the developments that fall outside of the smart and sustainable housing. So that's housing near transit. So the housing that we are building now should be near transit so that there are alternative modes to getting to workplaces, to getting to the grocery store, and to doing the things that people need to do when they live in a city. So I support housing that goes near those places that also takes into account safety and making sure that we're holding developers accountable when they come into town to build housing, that they're going to build it safely and that they're going to build it at actual affordable cost, not just what is considered affordable by regulation.
Okay, now Corey, the question about where the houses should be built, we've got this general plan, and maybe one of you will talk a bit about that at some point, but are there any of these major new developments that are coming up that you feel, okay, that is exactly where I'd like to see more housing, or I wish we didn't have to build there? What is your feeling about where we're getting denser in Oceanside?
The transit corridor is definitely, like Eric said, that's where we want a lot of the development to come. Oceanside is one of the only communities in San Diego County that still builds single-family homes. Most of the rest of San Diego County isn't building single-family homes anymore. So even though we have housing projects coming, I feel grateful that we still have builders that want to come to Oceanside and build single-family homes. It's a challenge to get builders to come and do low-income housing, or housing that's not so profitable for them because they have to attract investors to get those projects underway. And if there's no profit in these projects, we can't attract the developers to come. So it's kind of it's a fine line that we walk.
I see you're talking about attracting developers. I'm more interested to hear about your ideas about where in the city is the best place to be building this extra density.
The transit corridors.
Definitely
the transit corridors.
Okay, so give us an example of some of the developments that you see happening right now that you think are the right place.
Well, actually, our whole train station and bus station, the transit center, is going to be redeveloped. And I think that's the perfect location. There's it's kind of a a older area that needs some revamping, and it's a dark area. There's a lot of homeless hanging out in that area because it is dark and it's an easy place to hide. So once that redevelopment comes in and just changes the look of that whole area, I think it's going to have an effect on all the other elements that are going on right there.
Isn't that the development where there's a huge block of, it's not single family homes by any means,
No.
it's like a huge block, it's
It's
dense
high density.
housing, it's several stories high,
Yes.
it looks like a block of flats. How do you feel about having more buildings like that in Oceanside?
Well, I think our planning commission does a really good job at encouraging builders to, add characteristics to the building so that they don't look to just square blocks down the street. And I think the community's now getting really involved in putting their input into the architecture and the elements that they would like to see, whether it's a little dog park or more windows with little balconies. And I think that's really important.
Okay, so Darren, you had mentioned that the residents aren't being heard enough, and we've got a planning commission who do their best to try to weigh all the pros and cons and come up with the decisions. But what do you think that the residents need? What is it that the residents are telling you that you think needs to be expressed more on City Council?
Well, the residents are telling me that they feel like second-class citizens in their own city, that tourism is a top priority, and developers are listened to. And look, we need tourism and we need developers. But they feel like no one's listening to them, that when they go to meetings, when they give input, that it's just they give the input, but no one really cares about it. And so that's why you see these continuous fights, whether it's over in more rural areas like Morro Hills, or developments in downtown, or new developments that when they changed the zoning recently. They feel that they're not anti-development, but they want to make sure the development fits within their neighborhood, fits within their residential area, and we need to do a relook at the whole zoning. And I know a lot of that's going on right now, but the residents feel like they're not being listened to. I mean, we have that issue right by my house over an airport with a big warehouse. And so that's the key. We need to have a vision of where we want to go, whether it's the transit corner, whether it's infill, whether it's apartments all the way to single-family homes, and we need to have more of the residents' input in terms of that, not just that they're given input and people say, yeah, thank you for your input, but actually listen to in modifications, whether it's architecture and the rest. Thank you.
So what kind of input have you heard that would perhaps be viable? Because I think you all have agreed that Oceanside has got to build more housing. I mean, the state is requiring that we build thousands more homes. And do you know the exact amount, Eric?
2,000 something.
About 2,000 more homes in the next few
and
years.
they're varied out by 4 different stages: very low income,
Right.
moderate, and high end. And you'll notice if you look at our progress in our arena numbers, we're not having too much trouble building the high end housing, but it's everything else behind that's lagging. And so that's really where our council needs to take a sharp look at where we can partner with organizations that are willing to do that work and be willing to take state and federal dollars to do so. I know that we've heard from our council many times that if you use state and federal funding, then you're propping up people or you're giving handouts. But in fact, government is of the people and for the people, and it should be used to serve the people that are in need. And right now, we need housing.
So, Corey, is there something that the City Council can be doing to make sure that the developers are including more affordable housing? I mean, how does the City Council balance the competing needs for a developer who makes profits and the public that need affordable housing?
Well, with the density bonus initiative, that incentivizes builders to build more units, but a percentage of the units have to be affordable. So they used to kind of pay their way out of that before
Right.
not build the units because we had, it was more attractive to them to not build
the
the
developer
unit.
could pay you money instead of building the
Right,
affordable housing. But
right.
that's changed, right?
That has changed,
Okay.
and we're discouraging that. So in order to get your density bonus and be able to maximize your development, you have to build those units. And I think that has really helped.
Okay.
Can I add one thing to that
Eric.
piece? we do have more developers building the affordable housing. However, our city right now allows developers to move those units somewhere else. So we're creating another set of segregated housing where affordable units are all up in this section of the city and all the high-end units with access to all the services are in this end. I think that needs to be seriously taken a look at and revised.
So, Darren, you I think have a particular interest in veterans. Am I right in saying that?
Being retired in the Air Force, yes, and being in several veterans organizations. Mm-hmm.
Okay. How do you feel about how Oceanside has handled veterans housing? I mean, do you feel like it's had a lot of success in getting veterans housed? Does it need to do more? Is that something you would take a stand on if you were on the city council?
Well, there's really two separate issues that we're talking about. One is on veterans housing, veterans have the GI Bill. So there's really that way of going with veterans. They're not like different from anyone else, but then there's homeless veterans. And how do you keep veterans from being homeless, running out of money, suffering from PTSD? And so in that respect, I feel the city hasn't really done anything. That's why I'm proposing a military and veterans commission to go ahead and support the veterans in the military that we have here. Veterans serve their country, they get lower pay, and then they have some benefits, and then a lot of veterans, and I work on homeless veterans and the board of directors for New Directions for Veterans. So in terms of housing, it's really how do you help the veterans who have the greatest need and who could become homeless or have been homeless, and we don't do that. The city doesn't have any official commission or committee or anything, and we need to do more on that, and that's why I'm proposing that.
Okay, so Corey, as somebody who has served on the council for a couple of years, do you agree with that the city hasn't really done anything for veterans, for the homeless veterans housing?
Personally, I'm aware of about 40 different entities out there that serve veterans' needs, and there's a lot going on in the community. I don't see a lot of homeless veterans, so I'm not sure about that. I don't know where he's getting his information. But if it's important to that community that we have a commission, then definitely we should.
Okay. Well, we seem to have moved into the area of homelessness, which of course is just really such an intractable problem for all cities. And Oceanside now has the dubious distinction of having the most homeless in North County of all the different cities. And it's increased significantly in the last couple of years. So we do have this new transition shelter that is being worked on Oceanside Boulevard. I saw in the paper recently we got an extra $3 million for that. We've been given millions of dollars. So Corey, I want to ask you, this is obviously a good thing, but how much do you think this will really be enough to solve the problem?
Well, prior to the pandemic, I worked in the alcohol and drug and mental health field. And I think what we were lacking was the wraparound services. We had a lot of groups in Oceanside that were providing food and clothing, and what we didn't have was good case management and assessments and referral to long-term treatment. So I think this new navigation center that we're adding is going to be our year-round shelter, but it's only 30 days. So the idea is to bring people in off the street, have them work with a case manager, get them assessed, find out what their needs are, and get them directed to long-term solutions, which a lot of those are going to be in San Diego. We don't necessarily have the capacity in Oceanside that they have in San Diego as far as funding and beds available, and there's a lot more services down there. And if we can get these people into long-term treatment, then we have a better chance of them not coming back to the streets.
Well, that's interesting because, the people that the City Council picked to manage this center is the Rescue Mission, is that right? Who is a San Diego Rescue Mission, so they already work downtown. So
right.
I hadn't realized that the city was actually feeling it was going to depend on the city of San Diego to provide longer term solutions for its homeless. Is that really what the strategy is?
Not just San Diego. The Rescue Mission is building other facilities in East County. So depending what the needs are. There's a lot of reasons that people end up on the street. Mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence, and the economy. So depending on what an individual's needs are and what kind of help they need, they could be directed anywhere.
Okay. Interfaith has been operating a lot in North County and is based in Escondido, and probably has something to do with the fact that the number of homeless in Oceanside is now higher than in Escondido because of their work. But Eric, I mean, what do you think about whether this new center is actually going to make a difference to what we see on our streets, which is, you know, people living on the streets? Do you feel like more is needed?
I mean, absolutely. It's you never say no to starting a new program that can help people. So I will say that. It's great that we have finally started as a city to do something proactive in this space. The problem is sending folks down to San Diego. There's many problems, but one is that we know in fact, most of our homeless individuals are from our city and don't want to leave and go live in San Diego. We also know that to get into the navigation center, you have to be brought in, typically by a police officer, and you have to leave behind. Maybe you have a pet, maybe you have a partner that you're living with on the street that is taking care of each other. You have to leave that behind when you go to the center. It's a bunk style congregate setting where it just is, it's not ideal for opening up the doors to people to come in. You cannot walk into the center.
It's supposed to be a low barrier center, is what I'd heard.
It is phrased as that, and it is not extremely high barrier, but there are people that have lived on the street for a long time have other priorities, including some of them have pets and things that they're just not willing to leave behind because we're not meeting people where they're at. So when you go and volunteer with organizations like Humanity Showers or Lived Experiences, and you meet people who are experiencing homelessness, you realize it's a problem that is including people that have jobs that just they still can't afford to live. They live out of their car. Or it includes people that are family, it includes people that are hidden in many places. And that I don't think a lot of those individuals are going to get picked up by this center. And I think we need to recognize that the long-term solution to homelessness is homes. And that goes back to your first question about what we have to do in our city.
All right, so, you know, Darren, veterans I think have had more help than many others in the homeless population, but I don't know whether you feel like, you know, beyond veterans, you've got a perspective on what the city needs to do to make a more long-term solution for the whole homeless population, not just veterans.
Absolutely. I've worked on more than just the homeless veterans. I've worked on homeless for over 25 years, first in the city of Long Beach as the committee member on the city's homeless commission, at the VA, and on New Directions for Veterans over in West LA. I've looked at what the city has done, and that's why I'm proposing a commission, a homeless commission. Because if you actually have worked this issue and you understand how it has to go, we're a city without a plan. We're a city where homelessness is buried under the Housing Commission, and the Housing Commission didn't even meet for 3 months straight. We have some good programs, but it's like I always say this to people to try to understand. It's like if you have a basketball team and you have 5 good players, but you don't have a coach and you don't have the plays, you're just playing street ball. And that's what we're doing. Is the union mission and their shelter a good thing? It is. But we're also experienced as providers, and I've talked to Interfaith and Solutions for Change. Policy would have unintended consequences. So we have a motel policy that causes homeless not to go into programs because they don't want any rules or regulations. We have this in West LA, we have this in Interfaith, 50% of the beds undone. The only way to fix that is to have a commission that has providers on it, business people, residents, take the best practices and create what's called a continuum of care, which is the plan for Oceanside. And then you can connect these programs, and then you can say, are our policies working, or are they actually tracking from Carlsbad and Escondido? And that way you can actually fix it and put the programs connected with the county and whatnot. So that's what we're missing. Until we do that, we're just spitballing.
So let me just ask you, how would a commission, for example, fix the problem of people choosing to go to a motel instead of a shelter?
Well, what the commission does is it puts together the plan. Okay, and it takes the lessons learned and the best practice, and it says, for those who want help, what do we have? What do we have in Oceanside? What's the gap? Who's accountable? What are we driving to? So in the VA, when I first started working at the VA, we were at 250,000 count. By the time I left the VA, we were about half of that. And so we have a count, but we don't know where we're going with it. So then we have those who want help and those who don't want help. I did police right along.
Yep.
Everything we went to was homeless who didn't want help. So we have to identify those and put a specific plan of what are the options. How do we get around certain state laws? How do we navigate? What do other organizations do? What do other cities do? And therefore, with the plan, we can see what works and what doesn't work and drive down the numbers.
Okay, Corey, so here we have another suggestion for another commission. What do you think about commissions? Do you think commissions
First,
will
I'd like to address what Eric said about
Okay, go
not
ahead.
being able to take your pets to the shelter,
Okay.
and that's absolutely not true. The Navigation Center is pet friendly. We have storage lockers and areas available for people to store their belongings, so their belongings will come with them. Also, the Humanities Showers is also a referral partner and a way to start the conversation with people to convince them to come to the Navigation Center and start working on their issues. So I don't want people to think if they have a dog, they can't come to the shelter, because
well,
they
that's good to
can.
know.
Yeah,
They
that's
can.
very good to know. And if
Yeah.
I'm wrong about that, then I apologize.
Well, I
That's
just want to
really
make sure
great.
nobody
yes.
thinks
Yeah,
that.
that message
There
is
are
out.
many reasons why people don't want to go live in a shelter, but
Right.
that one is not one of them, it
Good.
turns out.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So this idea, A, the commission, and B, I understand you had some concerns about mixing all different kinds of homeless. You've got people with mental health issues, you've got people
Right.
suffering from domestic violence, you've got veterans.
And our Navigation Center is really unique because in the old school building, it's kind of, the way it's laid out, it's conducive to separating.
Huh.
So we have separate areas for families with kids, moms with kids, dads with kids. There's different areas that are very distinctly different,
okay.
so that people will feel comfortable when they come there. And everybody is going to have a safe space and feel comfortable there.
Okay. I should just mention that KOCT has a video on what Oceanside is doing for the homeless, and I found it quite impressive, so it's worth watching if you're interested in what the city is already doing.
And just one more thing,
Eric.
we actually do as a city have a homelessness plan. It's several hundred pages, many pages, and there's a very developed plan.
So you're disputing
I'm
that there
just
is no
I'm
plan?
just saying that if you want some late night reading and some really important information, then you can check out our homelessness plan, and it absolutely should be updated with the most recent and best data possible, for sure.
Okay, all right. Let's move on to another question which really defines our city. We've just invested or allowed private investors to build 2 enormous hotels on the pier, and it's becoming a resort town, which I think some people are quite surprised and some people are quite shocked at, and some people are thrilled at. But the thing is, it all depends on sand, and the sand appears to be shrinking. It's definitely obvious that the beaches are getting smaller year by year. So Darren, what do you support? I mean, how important is it that we keep the sand on the beach, and what would you support to do to make sure we don't lose our beaches?
Yeah, so we have both a short-term problem and a long-term problem. Short-term problem is, and I support what the city's currently doing with their pilot and the jetties and the sand. So we're losing ours.
Can you just quickly say what you understand the city is currently doing?
Yeah, so the city did a review and a study, and the study talked about doing a pilot with some jetties, and the jetties will keep the sand there.
Okay.
But in the study, in the pilot, you really have 2 issues going on. One is the short term until they build the jetties, and if that works, keeping the sand, and so you have to continually truck in sand from different parts, El Corazon, other parts of the city.
And we see sand being pumped every
Yes,
year,
yes,
right?
and it's critical because we have no sand, we have no beaches, and our tourism and whatnot. So there's a big environmental issue here, and I think everyone's in agreement that we need the sand, we need the beaches, and then what's the best way to do it? So I'm glad to see the city has been moving forward on that. My concern is, having been in government, there's a tendency to be really process-oriented and move very slowly. I'd like to see more aggressive timelines and accountability in terms of getting this pilot up and running, get the jetties up and running, seeing how it works. So we need to continually, in the short term, make sure we identify our sand resources and get it to the beach. In the long term, we need to more aggressively find out what our more permanent solution is with the jetties. Will the pilot work? And deal with this on a long-term basis.
Do you support the jetties? Because that is a controversial issue. The Coastal Commission is very opposed to them. Other cities downstream are opposed to them, but they do work. So I don't know what you feel about that.
I do support the current plan with the jetties, and we'll have to see how they work. We do need to be sensitive to our neighbors. downstream, but we can't be the only city without sand either. And so there are jetties, north of us,
Yes.
and we need to do it. And so that's the reason it's a pilot, to see how it works, to see what happens, mitigate any negative effects, and see other modifications. I mean, I think we're all open to whatever will work. If someone comes up with a better plan, I think we're all open to that better plan. But for right now, it's been extensive study and a pilot, and I support that pilot.
Okay. What about the fact that we've been met with a certain amount of disagreement, shall we say, from cities south of us when we talked about putting in, and these jetties are these like rock groins that stick out and then trap the sand so it doesn't all get washed down the coast. And the Coastal Commission, of course, is very against jetties and groins. What is your position on them?
Well, this is why we brought in a coastal zone administrator that's, a highly skilled professional, and she will be able to deal with the Coastal Commission and with our neighbors to the south. I think that our harbor and beaches resemble Newport Harbor and Newport Beach a lot. It's almost the exact same. And the groins have protected those beaches and kept their sand in place and have proven very successful.
Newport has a huge beach, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yes.
And they wouldn't have had without the groins.
Okay.
So I think it's very important we're going to have the groins, and we're going to have to replenish the sand and then retain it. So it's interesting to me that some of our neighbors to the south are against our groins, but they have groins. So, and I think that sand migrates. I mean, I know that sand migrates.
Yes.
So they will still get a percentage of sand that is in the natural migration. And I think that the amount that we retain and prevent from migrating is not going to be substantial enough to affect them.
So do you think it's worth spending millions of dollars on replenishing our sand, Eric?
So first of all, I think we all agree sand is really important to our identity as a city. I'm a body surfer, and so sand being on our beaches is really important to me.
Yeah.
Just as a personal level, that's one of the ways I interact with nature. So spending millions on getting sand is a tricky question, only because if the Coastal Commission is going to say no, then I do not think it's a good use of taxpayer dollars to send a bunch of millions down the drain. If we're reasonably assured that the Coastal Commission can get this through, then I think that we can have a real conversation about it. Part of this is out of our control, and part of it's not. That's what makes it a frustrating conversation. I think the one thing that we absolutely can do is make a sustainable way to get sand from hopefully Camp Pendleton to our north end of our beaches. And you're right, that sand does move. It goes all the way down south until it drops off into the Black's Canyon. So we also have a lot of cities to the south of us that will support us doing these hard infrastructure sand replenishment projects. And I think SANDAG is looking at how they can support it as well.
Okay, so I'll just throw out this question, whoever wants can just jump in. I know some people think that the city is spending more on things like, the sand and the pier and these new resorts, hotels and tourist facilities, and not enough on the neighborhoods. What do you think about that?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we look at the COVID funding that came through. Tens of millions of dollars came through in COVID funding that was supposed to be for our neighborhoods to recover from the devastating effects of the pandemic. We have neighborhoods that have been truly ravaged because the adults were frontline workers and they had to show up to work, and we lost a lot of people to the pandemic. The money that is currently being spent from the COVID funding doesn't get to those neighborhoods. It doesn't support those neighborhoods. So this is beyond, it's a systemic issue on a year-by-year basis because we see community centers that are underfunded. We see the very stark differences between our neighborhoods where you see shade canopy in one and absolutely no shade, where the rising temperatures are hitting people who are more reliant on walking and biking. There are so many things that we can do to invest in the neighborhoods that we have here and that we've failed to do over the past decades.
Okay.
Yeah, let me add to that.
Go ahead, Darren.
No, I agree with Eric that we need to do more for the neighborhoods. And people say, well, how do you do that? I mean, we need to look at the budget, and we need to, whether it's a business budget or the federal budget, what's the red line? What's the things you really need, and what's the things you don't, and spend less on that. So we need to kind of like rebalance and look at the budget and identify any waste in the budget, and identify what's going to have the highest impact for the neighborhoods, and not just spend on the neighborhoods without understanding impact. I also want to address one other thing, because Eric brought up about the homeless, the plans. I've looked at all sorts of existing plans, whether it be homeless plans or city plans for zoning or other things. One thing I learned in the federal government, and reason I say we don't have a real plan on homelessness, is because they're very process-oriented plans. Yeah, pages and pages and pages, and yet things don't get better. They don't get better because, and I had this problem in the federal government with the VA and instituting new things. Government workers are not used to outcomes and results. They're used to planning, and we have this and this and that, and therefore everything's okay. And so these plans need to be redone so that they're real plans with people accountable, milestones, outcomes, numbers, so that we actually get results and we hold people accountable to those.
Do you have any suggestions for what the city could be doing to bolster the neighborhoods, to be investing in neighborhoods more?
Well, I mean, for one thing, there's a lot of streets that need repaving. Mm-hmm. And, you know, can there be more, you know, fixing up the parks? I got a skateboard park right by my house, which is a nice skateboard park, but it's, for example, the toilets are always broken. There's no landscaping, and so people want safe parks. They want, you know, roads that they can drive on. They want, you know, there's not one pool over in El Corazon or Brooks, but they want places where they can swim and do community things. So we need to get more input from the neighborhoods of what's their top priorities, because we can't fund everything at one time. But we need to focus on what is the top priority that the residents want, so that they don't resent the tourists, so that we don't resent the hotels, and how we most effectively using that sales tax and new money coming in.
Right. So Corey, this idea that the neighborhoods perhaps are being neglected while we're focusing on tourism, you know, can you explain perhaps why it is that we're seeing this?
I have to agree. You know, I've gone to some meetings at the various community centers, and I was really disappointed at the deferred maintenance in the buildings. I think we need to put more funding into our parks and our community centers for sure. When the marijuana or cannabis industry came in, that was a big concern of mine. But I wanted that money that they were bringing to the city with the taxes and whatnot to go into prevention and into our community centers, because that's where the prevention needs to be focused. And I think prevention starts as early as possible for substance abuse. So once, you know, that money starts coming in, I hope that we stay on target and keep that money funneled into our community centers, because the deferred maintenance definitely has to be dealt with. Some of the parks, the community centers that I went to at night were not well lit. And I thought, well, this is kind of scary and not good. And we can't have the various gangs claiming our parks because they're dark and accessible at night. So I'm really hopeful that that cannabis income will remedy a lot of the deferred maintenance and get more programs.
Okay, well, since you have been sitting on the City Council for a couple of years and you have a background in this kind of thing, I believe, you know, is there anything that you've done that you feel has benefited the neighborhoods?
That's a great question. I think that we all have the neighborhoods in mind, and it's a matter of, you know, getting, everything takes time. And the deferred maintenance at the beach level, because it is such a corrosive environment, it has really actually become in some cases dangerous. And we have no ADA compliance at our band shell and amphitheater, and it's really important that we get the ADA accessibility implemented into the downtown, into that.
So you're saying
area.
that the City Council's been very focused really on getting the downtown and the pier and the beach and the band shell
for
into
public
shape.
safety. It would be horrible if we had to close our pier because of deferred maintenance, or shut down the band shell and amphitheater.
Are we coming to the point where that might be a possibility?
If we don't take care of the deferred maintenance.
Okay, so are you saying that really a lot of your time and energy on the City Council is focused on those kinds of things rather than the neighborhoods?
Safety, but the neighborhoods are always, you know, in our thoughts, because it is so critical.
Okay, Eric?
I would just say it's really important that we elect somebody to the council that is in the neighborhoods all the time, that's very present. And while our beach and our pier and our amphitheater and our junior sale community center are really important to our culture and to our future, our neighborhoods have been left behind. And if you are in them constantly, you can see the differences. About a year ago, I came to council and asked for a crosswalk at Crouch Street and Apple and a couple other where they're frequently crossers, and it's very dangerous. A council member who's in the neighborhood and seeing these things on a daily basis can bring those forward and get action happening faster for our neighborhoods.
Okay. I'd like at this point to change this up a little bit and offer you each the opportunity to ask one question of one of the other candidates. You can pick whichever candidate you want to ask and pick one question and give that candidate, a minute or so to respond. Where should we start? Corey, why don't we start with you?
That's
Do you
a
want a
great
minute?
opportunity, but I don't know which direction to go.
Okay, well, if you would like a little more time, does
Yeah.
somebody else have? Okay, Darren.
I'll pick it. Let me ask this question of Eric. And Eric, I appreciate you being a teacher. My wife's a retired special ed teacher as well. I know how challenging that is. But to be on the city council, you need to have management experience, and you need to have practical experience of dealing with various governments and stuff like that, and on the issues. So let me ask you this: homelessness is a #1 issue in the city. People want results. They want something done about it, and sometimes they get very angry about it. What is your experience specifically in terms of dealing with the homeless issue, and what would you propose specifically?
Yeah. So specifically, I do volunteer work. So Humanity Showers was mentioned earlier, is a frontline organization that provides showers to homeless individuals. And in that time, while folks are waiting for a shower or getting their food and coffee, I've had conversations and to really get to the heart of what is going on with individuals. So I have individual experience, I have administration experience on the school board, a record that I'm really proud of bringing resources to places where they're needed the most. And my plan specifically for homelessness is to do many things. I think we need to look at safe parking as a possible option to get people safe and off the streets so that they can have the space and the mental space to recover and get the services that as you termed would be a continuum of care, which I think is a great term for it because the needs are very diverse. And so while we have some individuals that need access to mental health supports, we have some individuals that just need a little bit more help getting into housing. Our Section 8 housing waiting list is 10 years long, and that's absolutely it's a mark on our society that we have let our seniors, especially who are most of us homeless, be taken care of so poorly.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to ask a question?
I have a question for
Okay,
Eric
Corey.
as well.
All right, I get all the questions.
So earlier this year, the Garrison School was sold, and we needed 3 acres for our sewer lift station. And I was hoping that we would be able to get the entire property to have more field space and more community space for our kids. But the school board decided to sell that school to developers, and while the city was in the act of purchasing it. And I just want to know how all of that transpired.
So that is definitely not the understanding of the school board. We offered it up, and it was in fact our preference to sell the whole property at one time to the city. And we did that because one, it can provide services, which is a preference anyway. But two, when you sell to a developer, it has a very long process that could fall through at any time. And so our preference was to sell it to the city. So I'm not sure why it would be perceived that we made the decision not to.
It was sold out from under us to developers when
we did not have an
wanted
offer
it.
from the city.
That's not my understanding.
Interesting.
Because I was
Okay.
very, very interested in that property, and we had.
Yeah.
So
one
you were
corner
on the
for our
school
lift
board,
station.
and
Yeah,
your
I'm on the
understanding
school-
is that
it's
you did
completely
not have an
different.
offer from the city. Okay.
So
this-
what I will say just to that
Go ahead.
really quickly, This is why having somebody on the school board moving into the city council is really important. We're just not having the conversations that we need to have to support everybody in our city. This is clearly something that.
Well, I was going to
fell through the
ask
cracks.
that one of the things the City Council is not responsible for, among many other responsibilities, is education. So, you know, how is being on the school board going to help you to become a member of the City Council?
Yeah, so we've been faced with incredibly difficult decisions over the last 4 years, and as a city council member, we're going to be faced with the same. Taking in information, processing information, knowing that you have to trust people who are experts in their fields and working collaboratively to bring people together to solve hard problems is the same thing on the school board as it is in the city council. So my experience will absolutely carry over, even though the content is a little bit different. I'm excited and really enjoying learning about some of the city.
Okay.
Do I get a chance to do a question?
Yes, you do.
Okay, I'll wait.
I just want to say that your question is well taken, though, and we obviously cannot resolve that here, but it does show that there is a lack of communication somehow between the city and the school district.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you now have a chance to ask a question.
Yeah, so my question is for both.
No, I think I'm going to stick with I would like you to choose one person and ask it.
Okay. So I think this election is one of the most critical critical parts of this election is the fact that we've had our democracy constantly under attack. I would like to ask Darren that, does he believe that Biden won the 2020 election, and has he ever said anything to undermine people's faith in our electoral process, especially that election specifically?
So I do believe Biden won the election. We have a process. I have a master's in public management, and so you go through that process after election day of counting the ballots, state certifying, lawsuits, et cetera. That process went through, and you know, although I was disappointed in the outcome, I fully accept that Biden won. I have expressed that disappointment early on in the process, but I don't believe it's expressing disappointment or concern about election integrity throws anyone off. So I would, to answer your question, I would say no, I've never done anything that would cause anyone to be concerned about the future election, other than that we always must be vigilant in making sure that we do have fair and honest elections as we go forward.
Okay. Thank you. I think I'm going to use my prerogative as the moderator here just to say that that's a good question. What do you think about whether Biden won?
I absolutely think Biden won, and I think when we saw people who considered themselves leaders in our community or the nation as a whole questioning the integrity of the election that was clearly baseless, we saw a violent attack on the Capitol, and we see the results continuing on this day with very, very violent threats. We've received some of people who have been talked about as enemies. Democrats and Republicans shouldn't be talking about each other as enemies. We should be doing what we're doing here and bringing the best ideas to the table and then letting the voters decide. I think the dangerous rhetoric is, it gets out of hand very quickly, and I'm really concerned about it going forward. I think everybody should be very clear about how they stand on that.
Okay.
I have to say I agree with Eric on that.
Okay, so I'm going to come right back to Oceanside city politics very soon, but I just want your take on that too, as to whether you think Biden did win the election.
Well, yes, obviously, he's president, he won. I think that the last 8 years, both presidential elections were challenged by the other party, both times. I'd like to see that end. You know, it's gotten, you know, a little too contentious, and personal attacks and everything that goes on is just unnecessary. We should stick to policy, and we should stick to the best for the citizens, and just not be so aggressive with our politics.
Okay, we could go on with that, but I will bring it back to Oceanside and say there has been quite a bit of controversy recently about the city treasurer, who's been accused of inappropriate behavior. The Treasury manager, is that right, has, I believe, resigned. And I'm just wanting to know whether this controversy has affected the city's finances. Has it threatened the stability of our investment portfolio, for example? Corey?
I don't believe so at all. I think the treasurer's role in the city is to give reports to the community as an elected person, and he doesn't have actual hands-on access to the city's assets or trades or any of the things that he believed that he had. And I think it was just a personality conflict that unfortunately grew and became very contentious between the two parties. And it turned into a lot of mudslinging back and forth. And I think that it's unfortunate what happened, but it didn't affect our finances. And the city has fail-safes in place where that can't happen.
Do you think that something needs to change about the way that the city's finances are managed?
No, I mean, I think that part was fine. It was the treasurer's misconception of his role.
Okay.
So I think we're clarifying that
Okay,
going forward.
thank you. So Darren, do you see the need for any kind of change in the city treasurer's role, which is an elected position right now?
Yeah, I think we should definitely look at it. I agree with Corey that it's really the city staff who run the office, not the elected. But I think we should look at, for the future, what are the qualifications? Because anybody can run it, anybody can get elected, and is that what you really want?
Right now, there's no qualifications for this role,
Exactly,
right?
that's my
Okay.
point. So I think we should look at the qualifications and look at the mechanisms. I mean, the city has ethics rules and mechanisms for that, and I think we should relook at those, relook at the situation, and see what we can learn to improve it. And maybe we should look at maybe actually putting in some qualifications for that treasurer position, and looking at why did this person go the direction they did, what happened in the office. We always can do better, and I think especially if it's a treasurer's office, we need to make sure we do better.
Okay, well, as Corey says, the city treasurer does not actually have any power over what is done with the city's finances. But what do you think is the importance of having an elected city treasurer?
I think it's really important to have an elected watchdog in as many places as we can possibly do that. It brings up the idea that these positions really should be people that are coming out of our community, that are, for me, it strikes a chord with who can run for political office. So right now, the way that our city is set up, you're not going to find people with full-time jobs like myself serving in public office because the pay is detrimental to raising a family. I mean, even on a full salary, it's hard to make it in this city, but with a part-time salary, it's even crazier. I think we should look at all kinds of reforms with our city and how it's elected, how everyone is elected to council and to treasurer, in order to make the city council better represent the people who live in this city. Those reforms don't just stop at elections, they also talk about access. Like, why do we not have Spanish translations in our city council meetings? We have a significant Spanish-speaking population. It's insane that we don't have that. We're just simply not serving many of our community members. And I think the system itself needs a lot of reform to do a lot better.
So we just have a few minutes left, and I've got time for you to give me a couple more answers. But one of them is perhaps we haven't even talked about things like law enforcement or fire safety or sustainability. There's a lot of things we haven't talked about here. So I want each of you just to say, what are the issues that if you were on city council you really feel you would be focusing on that we haven't had a chance to talk about in this hour? Corey, I'd like to start with you.
I don't think that we've mentioned parks, we've talked about parks. I have a lot of feedback from the community regarding dog parks and dog beach access. And it's something that was never the council wasn't interested in pursuing any of these things before, but 80% of Oceanside owns dogs, and I didn't know that. And I've learned a lot about the needs of dog owners in the city. And so along with everything else, I have given direction to staff to look into some areas for dog parks and possibly hours for beach access at one area of our beach, very limited. And I think that it's really important to listen to the needs of the entire community. And I really agree with Eric. I think we need a Spanish-speaking, whether it's a synopsis of the council meeting. I don't think we need to translate the entire meeting, but I really do like that idea. I don't know if there's a lot of Spanish speakers actually tuning into our council meetings, so I think it would be interesting to find out how many Spanish speakers are interested in having
Maybe more
the
would.
council. Right, exactly.
Okay, good.
So-
Thank you very much. So Darren,
Yeah. Good question. Three things that we haven't talked about that need to be addressed: police, fire, and our road, specifically Highway 76. So I did a police ride along. I went to fire station number 1, sat with them, and I've talked to the city staff, planning staff. So on the police, for decades we've been sitting there with the temporary headquarters. We need to do something about that headquarters quickly and get that plan moving. But we also need to properly fund the police and make sure that we beef up the police. We have staff. I mean, we have some rising crime rates. On the fire department, I was astounded in talking to them that we don't have enough money coming into maintenance for their fire engines. And so fire engines come from other cities oftentimes, and people don't even realize it. We need to make sure, I'd hate to be, because we had a big fire by my house, what if the fire engines broke down on the way to the fire because we weren't providing the maintenance? And on Highway 76, I learned from the city staff, and everyone complains about it. It's the major entry area, from inland coming in through 76. There's no plans to do anything with 76 ever. It's not according to the city staff from Caltrans. There's no money. It's not a priority. No one's fighting for it. And so they said, hey, whatever development you do along 76, you're stuck, because at this point, nothing's going on. So we need to take some of these issues that have been bubbling below the surface and bring them up.
what could the city do about 76? Sorry, I'm not sure what. I'm not sure what the city could do about 76. Is that?
Well, number one, city needs to make it a priority. They need to fight for money from Sandag.
Okay.
They need to go to Caltrans, and there's federal funding. So you need to
Got
work
it.
with your state
Okay.
assembly.
All right.
You need to work with the state senate. You need to work with your congressman. And I've worked these projects from the federal agency. Projects don't get on the radar unless someone is yelling and
I see.
fighting for them. And then once they get on the radar, then you get federal matching funds, and we can get it fixed. It's going to take, even if it was on the radar today, it would take a long time, years, to get that thing fixed. We need to get 76 fixed because it's a parking lot, and it just looks terrible.
Okay.
It is in our general plan to widen the 76 to 3 lanes on each side.
Okay. Thank you for that information. So, Eric, things we haven't talked about so far that you think are important priorities.
Yeah, so I have it under the umbrella of sustainable city. We've got to think about our city in the long term. Every time we make a decision, we need to be thinking much further down the road than just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. I want this city to be the beautiful, diverse city that I know and love it to be for my children and their grandchildren when they get older. So that means we need to think about every single development, its safety, its placement. We need to think about transit and how we're going to connect people in different ways. We have a city that was designed for cars. We've got to make it so people can access it by walking. It's not only good for a human to walk around more, it's also good for the businesses that are around, for people to be walking by, to create these connections between our unique neighborhoods. I think that we also need to take very seriously that the climate is something we cannot ignore. We have to take it on as a city. If we don't address the climate in our own way and hold our neighbors accountable for doing so, our future on this planet is in question. The science is in. We know it's the case.
Can I ask you to be more specific about things the city could do to prepare for climate change?
Yeah, so the city, half of our emissions right now are from vehicles, from transportation. And so following our smart and sustainable corridor plan is really important. So we have this plan where we put the housing near transit so that reduces vehicles that are going. The walkable, bikeable city is another way that you make a different mode of transportation that does not release emissions into the air. We also need to look at electrification. I know that we saw the new development that is now going to be approved at North River Farm is going to be all electric, which is a good step. But making sure that we're not building out areas that are going to cause people to do more vehicle trips. It has to be all the things when it comes to the climate, and most of those things, if not all of them, are really good for businesses and they're good for the health of our communities. So it's a topic that has a lot of different areas, like planting trees. All the things that make our lives better are also good for the environment. I think we need to tackle those head on.
Thank you very much. Good. Our last question, or last chance for you guys to talk, I think, is just to make a sort of a closing statement, each of you, about why you think you are the best person to solve the problems on Oceanside City Council, as opposed to your other candidates? I would like to start with you, Darren.
Thank you. I feel like I'm the best one to be the next city council representative because of my track record and my background and my experience. So whether it's been in the military, in the business world, in healthcare, or in the federal government, I know how to get things done. I know the levers that need to be pulled, and I have that expertise. And so others, I think everyone's well-meaning, but I have the specific expertise to get it done, and I have the track record to prove it and get it done. And I think philosophically, I'm going to be the one who's going to fight for the city residents and then make it happen for them. But I'm not going to impose on the city residents. I'm not going to force them, tell them where they have to live, what they can drive, and those sorts of things. And so I think what residents really want is someone who has the expertise to get things done, but and is going to give them options, but not going to force them to do things that they don't want to do.
Thank you. Eric Joyce, second.
So I believe I'm the best candidate for this office. One, because I'm extremely excited about the work. It is a beautiful thing to even be here and talking about the things that we care about this city that we love so much. I'm excited to get into the work, and I've made commitments that have improved the ability of our residents to trust. So I have made a statement, and I am sticking to it. I will not take money from developers. It's really important that we do everything that we can to make sure that our residents know that we're making the decisions in the best interest of them. So that goes with the way that we run our campaign. We're also a 100% positive campaign. You won't find any ugly texts or any bad emails or mailers that are attacking our opponents. We believe we have the right campaign platform, and we're working with a team of volunteers who are passionate about that work as well. Running the campaign, and then the way that I serve, the way that I've served on the school board has been open. I have been critical when I've needed to be of the school district. I've advocated for things that weren't always popular with everybody, but when knowing that the work that we are doing is the important and correct work, I've had the ability to stand on that and stand by what I know was to be the right thing to do. So I'll do the same thing at City Council.
Thank you very much. And Corey Jensen.
Thank you, Allison. I believe I am the best person for this job. I'm doing this job now. And I have deep roots in Oceanside. My family's here, my grandchildren. We're not going anywhere. So the decisions I make on the council are for my family. They're for the history and the generations coming up from my own flesh and blood. So they're deeply rooted decisions that we make. And also as a counselor, I'm a listener and a solver. I'm a great listener. I hear the community. I listen to what's happening on the city council, and I make thoughtful decisions. And I just feel like we have to keep our city going in the direction we're going. I don't think that it's smart at this time to radically change things up. I think that our city council is working cohesively, and I think that we need to maintain that momentum going forward and in a positive manner. And I just feel that I'm doing a good job, and I can continue to do a good job.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank our three candidates for District 1 in the Oceanside City Council. We've got Corey Jensen, Darren Zelnick, and Eric Joyce. Thank you so much for participating.
Thank you,
Thank
Allison.
you.
And thank you for watching. Be sure and find out a little bit more, perhaps, by going to KOCT's website. You can see the candidate statements for this district and all the districts, and even your state and federal offices are there, so it's really worth watching. And then remember to vote. You will be getting your vote in the mail if you're registered in the near future, and you can vote anytime from early October through November. Yes. So this is a very important election. Oceanside is changing fast. It's up to you to make the decision. So I'm Allison St. John, and thank you so much for watching the KOCT Roundtable.
KOCT, the voice of North County.